It's so silly how pop music works, you know? You're away from the pop scene for a while. People are like, where have you been?
I know, I've heard it all. I was under a rock, I was in a hole, I was in a cave.
But you could never prepare for being all of a sudden on TV in front of millions of people.
I mean, you have your funky look, your sneakers, and you know, it's like so individual. But I heard it wasn't always that simple. I mean, did they want you to put on a skirt and heels? Or?
Definitely. I had to fight for my look.
When it happened, I was like, whoa, this is like a horse that's going fast.
This is a quote. You lost all sense of who you were as an artist at that time.
Hi, I'm Shelby, and welcome to Shelby Search Bar, a series on Deep Dive where I take you all on a journey through the world's largest database, the internet, and present stories to you that I find interesting. Today, we are going to dive into a very special topic about an artist I absolutely adored when growing up, Nelly Furtado. Nelly Furtado shot to fame in the very early 2000s with her eclectic songs that were influenced by her Portuguese heritage and so many other genres of music. But at the height of her fame and best-selling album Loose, Nelly seemingly vanished. So if you're ready for some early 2000s nostalgia, grab your floaty and let's dive in. But first, this episode of Shelby Search Bar is sponsored by Hungry Root. Y'all know if I'm not working on Deep Dive, I'm cooking. But I really just don't have the time to plan out weekly recipes or grocery shop for that matter, and ordering takeout regularly is just not in my budget. When you sign up with Hungry Root, you take a quick quiz that lets Hungry Root know exactly your likes, goals, and dietary needs. Then every week, you're going to get fresh groceries along with 10-minute recipes delivered straight to your door. The groceries in the box are really personalized and tailored for your wants and needs, which for me is the best part because getting food you know you'll actually eat reduces food waste. I really love how the recipes are just fast and quick, making for a really simple weeknight meal. On the quiz, I marked down that I love shrimp and Thai food, and my very first box came with a Thai coconut chicken recipe and wild-caught shrimp with tortellini, which is really just fresh, nutritious, and delicious. Plus, the more you shop and cook with Hungry Root, the more the personalization engine learns what you like. So whether you're looking to recommit to healthy habits, save time on meal planning, or just try new foods, Hungry Root has you covered. The first 100 people to use my code DEEPDIVE40 will get 40% off your first grocery order with Hungry Root. So use the link in the description box or go to hungryroot.com and use code DEEPDIVE40 to get 40% off. Now let's get back to why Nelly Furtado vanished from the public eye. Nelly Furtado was born on December 2nd, 1978 in Victoria, British Columbia, Canada. Her parents, Antonio Jose and Maria Manuelo Furtado, immigrated to Canada in the late 1960s, but were from São Miguel Island, located in the Azores of Portugal. Nelly comes from a long line of Portuguese composers and conductors, which was her early inspiration musically. Nelly knew she wanted to become a singer when she performed a duet alongside her mom at church for a Portuguese festa.
You know, I sing in my cute 4-year-old voice, "My," which means mom. And then she says, "Minha filha," like my daughter. It's very cute. And we got it on that stage, and it was my first time on stage. And I was only 4, but I just knew immediately that one day I would be singing in front of thousands of people. And I just completely had a vision of it in my head, because I liked the immediate connection with the audience, and I overall just loved that people seemed so happy when I was on stage.
Growing up, Nelly went to Canadian school by day and Portuguese school by night, which gave her access to so many musical programs. This is where she learned to play instruments such as ukulele, trombone, and participated in the marching band. She even grew up doing Portuguese folk dancing, which real quick, just a fun fact, I also grew up doing Portuguese folk dancing, which is just like another reason why I love Nelly Furtado so much. Anyways, Nelly primarily always sang in Portuguese at church events, but it was in the early 90s when she fell in love with the hip-hop and R&B world.
I used to MC when I was 14. I used to write rhymes. That's the whole thing I grew up doing, you know? Like I was big into urban, early 90s kind of R&B.
Any artists that we would know?
Yeah, Yellow, Cool J, Ice-T, Pharcyde, De La
everybody,
Soul,
okay, all that
Mary
kind
J.
of stuff.
Blige,
Right, all that stuff.
Mariah Carey, whatever.
Right.
Belle Biv DeVoe.
Belle Biv DeVoe.
Yes. Salt and Pepper.
Michael
Yeah.
Bivins.
This is when Nelly would get into rapping, freestyling, and trip-hop, which is more of an experimental music genre, blending elements from hip-hop, reggae, jazz, and electronic music. She would also do some backing vocals for a friend who had a hip-hop group based out of Toronto, Canada. And this is when she knew she needed to move to Toronto to further her music career. Nelly started going to college for creative writing, and in 1997, during her free time, she started a trip-hop group called Nelstar.
Because I had some music connections in Toronto, because I had some family there, I moved over there. And I started a trip-hop group, and it was called Nelstar. And Nelstar is like my alias. It's like my alter ego. I have the solemn singer, Neil Young style singer-songwriter side, and then there's the street kid. This is the little urban kid.
Now, Nelstar didn't last very long as Nelly felt it was holding back her vocal abilities. So she would go solo, but still under her alter ego, Nelstar. She would also continue pursuing college as well as performing live in pubs. But her life would change forever in 1997 when Nelly would finally be discovered. She had auditioned for an all-woman music event in Toronto called the Honey Jam Showcase. What Nelly didn't know was Jarvis Church, formerly known as Gerald Eaton, of the then huge Canadian group Philosopher Kings, would be in the audience alongside his manager Chris Smith, scouting out new talent. And they were specifically there to see Nelly after being tipped off about this new up-and-coming incredible singer. Ebony Rowe, the founder of Honey Jam, said at the beginning of Nelly's performance, everyone was talking, but once they heard her voice, you could hear a pin drop. She just captured everyone's attention. Jarvis Church said the sincerity in her voice just grabbed him. And after the performance, he walked up to her and said, "Hey, let's make music." Nelly now had to choose between continuing college or producing a demo tape to shop around to larger labels with producers Jarvis Church and Brian West, who was also a member of the Philosopher Kings. It was a risk to leave school, but a risk Nelly was fully ready to take. This is when she began working on her first album that would later be titled Whoa, Nelly.
And as soon as we got together to record a demo, I knew that the energy was right and I knew that we could do it. It was kind of like, in Brian's attic studio kind of thing, very simple. And I actually wrote in my journal that day that I'm now ready to record my first album. So this is the first record they've ever produced. Like, the three of us were just experimenting basically, and it ended up being this big album.
A lot of the songs featured on the album were actually written while Nelly was a teenager, working alongside her mom as a chambermaid in a Victoria, Canada hotel. Half of the album was produced in Toronto, Canada, but Nelly, Jarvis Church, and Brian West would head to none other than Los Angeles, California to finish producing the remainder of the album.
Because we thought we'd be done the album in a month, but it took another 4 months in LA. I wrote 3 songs that morning before kind of being picked up to go to the studio, kind of at the last minute. And the third song was I'm Like a Bird, and just kind of went from verse to chorus, like, you're beautiful, that's for sure, you'll never, and then just right into the chorus and the bridge, and it's about 20 minutes, really.
The demos attracted a lot of record company interest, but the interest of DreamWorks and the chance to work with its breathtaking roster of artists proved too attractive to turn down.
They were really excited because it sounded so different, and I basically would kind of go into all these boardroom meetings and just be like, basically, I represent the future.
At the age of 20 years old, Nelly Furtado was signed to DreamWorks, turning down another label offer for $3 million. Something that has always been important for Nelly was having creative control, which isn't always possible when you're signing with a major record label. So she would even put a clause in her record deal that if she wanted to release a Portuguese or Spanish album, she could do so independently outside of her label. Now, major record labels also typically push a very specific look, and for artists that are women, that look is typically hypersexual. When filming the music video for Like a Bird, there were dresses in the fitting room that just didn't match with Nelly's style. Nelly at the time was described as having a tomboy aesthetic. Nelly said she was going to keep her hair short, wear her Adidas, her hoop earrings, and rave jeans, stating, quote, "I don't have people telling me what songs to sing or how to dress. I decide what I want to do with my music and how I want to look." Even at the young age of 20, Nelly could not be swayed to fit the typical pop star mold. She was going to stay true to herself no matter what.
I mean, you have your funky look, your sneakers, and it was like so individual. But I heard it wasn't always that simple. I mean, did they want you to put on a skirt and heels? Or?
Definitely. Really? I had to fight for my look. I had to say, I want to wear sneakers. I'm just a regular girl, so why am I gonna, go against that? So it was fun to be able to express myself. I was lucky, right?
Nelly Furtado's debut album, Whoa, Nelly, was released in October of the year 2000, producing 4 singles, Hey Man, Shit on the Radio, Turn Off the Lights, and I'm Like a Bird, and had a Portuguese song called Onde Estás. Whoa, Nelly started soaring in the charts internationally, but Nelly was having a hard time breaking into the US market. Sharing music on social media or streaming music just wasn't a thing yet. Back in 2000, artists had to rely heavily on radio play to get their music out there if they they wanted to chart.
Europe took to Nelly like a duck to water, but America, where she was possibly perceived as another Britney or Christina, took a lot longer to fall under her spell.
In America, I don't know, just slowly working. I had to knock on a lot of doors in the radio in America to get my song on. It took 10 months to get to top 5. I had to play my song in boardrooms for people with suits and ties on, acoustically, like, hey, check this out, play this song, call people, leave phone messages, sing to them, beg them literally to play my song. And eventually everyone started playing it, so that's how I got on radio in the States. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like the record company just kind of was like, here, play this, and they played it. It wasn't like that at all.
DreamWorks would also send Nelly on a promotional tour, getting her to perform live on all the popular talk shows of the time.
R&B and Portuguese sounds come together in Whoa, Nelly.
Her hit single, I'm Like a Bird, is currently number 8 on Billboard's Top 40 chart. Please welcome Nelly Furtado. Please welcome Nelly Furtado.
Between getting radio play and the PR tour, Nelly finally broke into the US market in January of 2001 when her album entered the Billboard Hot 200. Around this time is when she also started collaborating with mainstream artists. Nelly was on the official remix of Get Your Freak On by Missy Elliott. This remix is the first time Nelly got to work with artist and producer Timbaland, which is important later on in the story. Nelly's first album was such a commercial success in 2001 that she ended up winning 4 Juno Awards, which is like the Grammys in Canada.
Juno Awards, you won Best Songwriter, because you write all your stuff. Best New Solo Artist.
Yes.
Best Single.
Yeah.
And Best Producer. You're the producer?
Yep, I co-produced with Track and Field. The 3 of us made that record together. We produced the record together.
Track and Field?
I produce as well as write.
Wow, you do it all.
Yeah.
In 2002, Nelly Furtado won a Grammy for Best Female Pop Vocal Performance and was nominated for Song of the Year and Best New Artist. Because of Nelly's newfound fame and more tomboy look, magazines like Playboy would offer her $500,000 to be on the cover, which Nelly did say no to. But other magazines wanting to her for monetary gain would go as far to actually Photoshop her face on other people's bodies and would market it as look at Nelly's new hot look.
I purposely, try not to do those types of magazines. I don't like the editorial. I find it demeaning. They not only stuck my picture on, but they chose a photo and then altered it to make it look like I was wearing something different. It was just sort of salt on the wounds a little bit. So I just wanted my fans to let them know that I hadn't made that choice for myself. So when someone takes your power away in that way, it can affect you a certain way,
All this attention, positive or negative, did appear to be a little bit difficult for Nelly. On one hand, her dream of connecting with people through her music had come true, but on the other, she felt a form of imposter syndrome, where she just didn't feel like she was deserving of all the success she was experiencing.
But you could never prepare for being all of a sudden on TV in front of millions of people. I kind of felt unworthy of that, attention. I felt like, I'm so young and I'm just starting, and wow, you kind of feel, it definitely tests your insecurities a little bit, because you wanted that your whole life, but all of a sudden it's all coming at you really quickly. So it could be a little overwhelming, but of course incredibly exciting.
It was time to get working on her second studio album titled Folklore. Folklore would be another very eclectic album, which incorporated elements of folk, pop, and alternative music. The album still had influences from her Portuguese heritage, and Nelly said the album was more mellow, as she wrote and recorded most of it while she was pregnant with her first daughter. Folklore was released in 2003 and was mainly successful in European countries such as Germany, but never quite reaching that same commercial success as Whoa Nelly did in the United States. This is for a few reasons. The album was more mellow with less of a mainstream pop sound, but also during this time of the album's release, DreamWorks Records was actually sold to Universal Music Group, so Nelly just didn't receive the same promotion that she had with her first album, Whoa Nelly. Fast forward to 2005, and Nelly is in this state of limbo after being acquired by Universal Music Group. Jimmy Iovine, who founded Interscope Records, which is one of the labels under the Universal Music Group umbrella, had actually wanted to sign Nelly previously. So Jimmy was listening to some of Nelly's new tracks and felt they were just too mature. Jimmy remembered the chemistry Nelly and Timbaland had on the Missy Elliott remix. So when he met with Nelly a few days later, he told her to scrap the song she had been working on and get into the studio with Timbaland. This ended up being perfect for Nelly because she was actually looking to do a more mainstream pop urban album anyways. Salt and Pepper were one of her major influences, as she loved the way they claimed their sexuality while still being true to themselves. So she flew to Miami with her cousins and her daughter, who was 20 months old at the time, to begin work on her third studio album titled Loose. Now, Nelly says making the album Loose with Timbaland is some of the best and most exciting moments of her life. Her and Timbaland had so much chemistry and would truly become lifelong friends. But making this album would also begin to take its toll on Nelly, as this is the first album where Nelly was also a full-time mom, having to balance motherhood and her career. Nelly's schedule at that time was absolutely insane. From 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., she would take care of her daughter, and at 8 p.m., she would head to the Hitmaker studio in Miami. Timbaland and Nelly would work until 1 a.m., then Nelly would go crash in a tiny room in the studio and nap for a few hours. That's when Timbaland would go out to the club scene to see what people were dancing to and what they were inspired by. He would then return back to the studio around 4 a.m., and they would continue working for another hour or more. Nelly would then return home to take care of her daughter and would just do that all over again. As Nelly once said, she was potty training by day and recording Promiscuous by night.
When Tim and I first saw each other in Miami, it was like I said, it was like musical love. It was like this force. And we even talked about having a band together, like the Gorillas or something like that. So yes, I think that Loose is very special, and Tim believes the same thing. We felt like something magical was happening. You don't experience that every day in the studio. You could have a wonderful time. You could have an emotional time. You could cry your eyes out singing a song. You could jam the night away. But when that real gut instinct of something magical happening in the studio happens, it's really special. And I think we really hit those marks on this album. Really excited and proud of it.
Nelly's most commercially successful album, Loose, was released in June of 2006 and debuted at #1 on the Billboard Hot 200, was #1 in Canada, and overall was a global smash hit. The two most successful singles off the album were Promiscuous and Maneater, and they stirred up quite the controversy with their lyrics and subsequent music videos. Now remember, the magazines of the early 2000s had tried to sexualize Nelly Furtado, but when she expressly stated that she was taking control of her own sexuality is when it appeared to be a massive problem. Nelly began getting slammed in the media, where she was called a sellout for her new image. Dose magazine said Nelly's new highly sexualized look, where she shows her midriff, was due to Jimmy Iovine, who helped produce the Pussycat Dolls. Also during this time, Nelly opened up about her own sexuality, saying she finds women beautiful. And of course, since it was 2006, this hit the news cycles. Nelly kind of addressed the backlash in a European magazine interview, saying, quote, "This album is really sexually assertive in the way TLC used to be. I'm admitting to all my fans that I am a woman and I love to have sex."
Yeah. And your look has changed so much. I mean, the first CD to now, and what's the change about?
I don't know, I just grow. Growing up, I always liked the artists that were changing and growing all the time.
I hear that after you had your baby that you're more confident with your body.
Yeah, I am.
What changed? What changed with your body?
I just all of a sudden looked in the mirror, the week after I had my daughter, I went, ooh. My boy's bigger, and I like it.
So is that why in your video? Is that why? Because you're like 30?
Yeah, I'm like, what?
In the world of music, it appears that no good album comes without some controversy. And despite the backlash, Loose went on to be one of the most successful albums of the 2000s. Nelly had multiple nominations at the Grammys in 2007. And at the 2007 Juno Awards, Nelly would take home another 4 Juno Awards. In early 2007, Nelly was preparing for a massive world tour called the Get Loose Tour to promote her album. The tour kicked off in Europe, and in spring of 2007, Nelly continued her tour in Canada. And the tour eventually finished off in the United States during the summer. A fun fact about the Get Loose tour that many don't know about is Drake, and yes, that superstar Drake, actually sang backup vocals on the tour, which was right before his major rise to fame musically.
He did sing backgrounds for my opening act on the Loose tour in Canada. He did doubles.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So when you see him now, you're like,
and I probably ignored him or something.
Between Nelly's recording schedule that honestly left very little room for sleep, releasing an album, and going on a massive world tour, the burnout just came crashing down on Nelly like a ton of bricks. During one of her concerts, where she had what she describes as a nervous breakdown on stage. Quote, "I was on the Loose tour and my daughter was with me. I was being a mom and a singer on the road. I was exhausted. Then one night I went on stage and I suddenly realized how stressed out I was. I actually cried my way through the first 2 songs."
You lost all sense, this is a quote, you lost all sense of who you were as an artist at that time. What did that mean?
I think when I said that, I probably meant, like, for instance, like, all of a sudden you got a fully booked arena tour, sold out. Wanted to see if I could make something like that. And then when it happened, I was like, whoa, this is like a horse that's going fast.
Right.
And it was hard to keep up with the horse because it did become bigger than me.
But then you come home, and you're in your hotel room, or you're home you're home with your daughter.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, Nelly Furtado, the person, is really different than Nelly Furtado kind of Inc. Like Nelly Furtado, the business that you are.
Yeah. I craved maybe I craved normalcy or something.
This is seemingly when Nelly would completely disappear from the public eye and go on a hiatus from music. Nelly said she realized she just needed to be home to feel normal, and that the family experience was truly what she was seeking, as she has pretty much always been on the road for the first 4 years of her daughter's life. Nelly felt like she needed to get rid of the glitter that fame brings and ground herself again with real-world human experiences. So she started working at her daughter's school library. She also would work at her friend's record shop, and she even went back to college to take playwriting classes. But on top of all of that, Nelly would even start her own record label called Nelstar Entertainment, because she was truly passionate about artists having creative control and the ability to own their own master recordings. Now, remember that clause Nelly put in her recording contract that if she wanted to go out and do a Spanish or Portuguese album, she could do so independently? Well, in 2009, Nelly would do just that when she released her Spanish album, Mi Plan, under her own record label. Nelly really wanted to tap into the Latin pop world, plus she has always wanted to do a Spanish album. And now that she had stepped away from the public eye, she was less concerned about commercial success in the United States. Mi Plan, however, did reach commercial success in Latin America. It went to #1 on the Latin Billboard charts, and Nelly won a Latin Grammy for Best Female Pop Vocal. So while she was dominating the Latin charts, as far as the rest of the world knew, she had still vanished. 6 years after the release of Loose, Nelly would release her new album titled The Spirit Indestructible in 2012. The album unfortunately did not reach commercial success.
From an early age, I realized that there's a life beyond pop music. You know, there's jazz music, there's country, there's folk, there's, world music, there's Latin music. And so I'm just I'm up for anything. And whether it means I sell bucket loads or droplets, it's kind of about me growing and about learning something new.
5 years later in 2017, Nelly would release a super personal album titled The Ride, and the album was released 100% independently under Nelstar, her record label.
But there's another risk here too.
Yeah.
You're making this record outside of your contract. You're owning your own label. You're releasing it yourself. You're doing it very much on your own terms.
I was still signed to Interscope when I started recording The Ride, but I was doing my usual rogue activity of like, I'm just gonna do this and we'll play it for you later, that type of thing. And I was gonna come in and play them a song. And someone I work with said, "Why are you tap dancing? Why are you tap dancing?
Why are you performing? Why are you
performing like in a meeting?
You're Nelly Furtado.
That type of thing.
Yeah,
well, you don't have to prove yourself to anybody. Like, you've already done a lot of cool things. And it's cheesy. It's not maybe I learned to love myself a little more the last 5 years. I mean, because if you don't love yourself, you can't embrace those ugly little details. You really can't."
Also in 2017, Nelly would reunite with Timbaland and would make an appearance on his TV series called The Pop Game.
I'm happy you invited me out here because I love working with young up-and-coming artists, and I always tell artists this is when I started out, I had to play a lot of radio boardrooms just with a guitar. People were eating pizza, drinking soda, and they're kind of there for the free lunch, in their suits. And I was there singing, "My name's Nelly Furtado. This song's called I'm Like a Bird." And it's like I had to sing with the same intensity, the same enthusiasm, just as I do now when I play in front of 100,000 people. He may seem harsh or direct, but he knows what he's talking about. I remember how hard it was to really break into the music business.
Now, The Ride was Nelly Furtado's final album, and may be the last album she ever releases. As in 2021, Nelly revealed that she expanded her family and had 2 more children aged 2 and 3. She is truly living the family life she has always wanted to live. However, Drake was doing a concert in Toronto in 2022, and he was able to pull Nelly Furtado out of her hiatus to perform with him on stage. And for fans of Nelly, it was really cool to see her back on the stage live, if even for just a few minutes.
That's the only way that you could get this next person out of the house to come do what they're gonna do right now. But this next person's music changed my life so much. I love her with all my heart. So when she comes out here, you better show her some fucking love too. Let's go.
It's like Honey Jam all over again tonight.
This is your choir tonight. I want to prove something to you.
Okay.
Now after this, Nelly would perform in Australia at the 2022 Beyond the Music Festival to usher in the new year. She performed an entire 35-minute set, which was her first multi-song live performance since her last tour promoting her album The Ride. Music producer Dom Dalla, who invited her to perform at the music festival, had this to say. Her music was the soundtrack to some of my earliest memories. It was a surreal experience to invite her out on stage with me last night to perform one of my favorite records. It's been an honor getting to know you over the past few months, Nelly. Very excited for what the future has in store. So maybe there might actually be some new music coming from Nelly in the future. It has been 23 years since Nelly surprised the world with her unique musical style. While Nelly has stayed out of the public eye for many years, there is no doubt that she has left her mark on the world, providing the soundtrack for the core memories of millions of people during the first decade of the 2000s. Whether it was singing I'm Like a Bird in your car as a family or dancing to Promiscuous in the club, we all have a special place in our hearts for Nelly, and I hope future generations will always get to enjoy her music as well.